Hello. It's Saturday Night Live, and here we are one more time with our friend Swami Rama and Enlightenment without God, which is Mandukya Upanishad. Do you remember what Mandukya Upanishad is? It is considered to be, this is from the introduction, more profound than any other Upanishad. It is declared in Mukti Upanishad that if one studies and practices the teachings of the Mandukya Upanishad, one acquires the knowledge to attain enlightenment. Hello, Marydell. This Upanishad is not a book of mere mysticism, theology, or scholasticism, but is a sound philosophical scripture. This Upanishad discusses the nature of material and mental worlds, the nature of consciousness, and the meaning of causality. Boy, so busy. Hi, Johnny. Guten Morgen, Hashim. Hello, Teria, a.k.a. Violet. It accomplishes this by offering an experiential interpretation of three states of individual self and the state which lies beyond. The three states of the individual self are waking, Vaishvanara, dreaming, Tejasa, and deep sleep, Prajna. The fourth state, Turiya, is the state of pure consciousness, which is absolute reality, Brahman or Atman. Okay. And so I just wanted to make sure that we all kind of had some idea what we're talking about. We are in verse 4. And just to make sure, again, that we are well grounded in what we're doing, I'll briefly read the translation of the verses themselves. Just take this in. Verse 1. We're on verse 4 of 12. Hari Om, the entire universe is the syllable Om. The following is the exposition of Om. Everything in the past, present, and future is verily Om. That which is beyond time, space, and causation is also Om. It's pretty big, isn't it? Om is a pretty big deal, isn't it? Verse 2, all this, whatsoever is seen here, there, and everywhere, is Brahman. Brahman is not the name of a god, but is a name that refers to that infinite reality. This very self, capital S self, Atman, is Brahman and the absolute reality. This Atman has four aspects. Excuse me. And then verse 3 starts into those four aspects, and that's where we're going. The first aspect is the waking state, Vaishvanara. In this state, consciousness is turned to the external. That's what you and I are doing right now. We are pure consciousness. We are Atman. We are Brahman. But our consciousness is turned to the external. That's why we're out here in the world, and we are utilizing our instruments, our manas, chitta, ahamkara, buddhi, and our indriyas to engage the world out here. With its 7 instruments and 19 channels, it experiences the gross phenomenal world. That's those instruments that we do out here. Now, the verse that we're looking at tonight, and we're going to see what Swami Rama has to say about it to us. Here's the verse. The second aspect of that Atman, which operates outward, is the dreaming state, Tejasa. In this state, consciousness is turned inward. In Vaishvanara, consciousness is turned outward through the senses and all that. In Tejasa, consciousness is turned not outward, but it's turned inward. It also has 7 instruments and 19 channels, which experiences the subtle mental impressions. This is very significant because a couple verses from now, we are going to notice that when we move to that third level in Prajna, those instruments do not come along for the ride. So we simply must have some surface level understanding of the notion of form and formless. Because when we turn inward to the depths of our being, we simply cannot take our senses along with us. All that we can have with us there is pure knowing itself. Now that seems totally illogical, I know, to the waking state conscious mind that we're in right now. But we simply must let go of our senses and what you and I normally think of as the thinking mind. It cannot go along with us. This is why any comment about conscious deep sleep sounds very, very paradoxical and sounds impossible. How can I possibly be conscious in deep sleep? Well, it's because I can't take my mind along with me. It's an instrument. I have to leave it aside, okay? I'll read this verse again. The second aspect is the dreaming state, tejasa. In this state, consciousness is turned inward. It also has 7 instruments and 19 channels, which experience the subtle mental impressions. Now, if that sounds a little strange and hard to understand, it's because it is. For our conscious waking state mind to even remotely have a conversation about this stuff is extremely difficult, if not impossible. So if reading something like that sounds leaves you a little like, huh, what's that saying? Don't feel bad about it. This is why the requirement is there. It's just necessary. It's not a rule requirement. It's just necessary that we ponder this, we contemplate on this, we attempt to explore within for a very long time. Patanjali says it in Yoga Sutras. You have to have a good attitude, a good, positive, caring, curious attitude, and you have to do it for a long time with no vacation. You don't say, well, I've been doing that for a few weeks. Now I'm going to take a month off and I'm going to come back to this when I have more time to read this book again or something like that. It's just constant awareness. That's the goal. We practice this a little bit every day, but don't beat up on ourselves. And we utilize a good attitude. There's just no escaping that. But it's a neat journey, isn't it? Now, let's listen to what Swami Rama has to say about this. It's not really very long, but you know me a little bit. I tend to add a little bit to it and expand upon it or just stir things up, I suppose. Matri is giving me a funny look over there. Those eyes are looking at me she has smiling eyes that are laughing. She knows. Anyway. Hello, Rosalind. Hi, Roseanne. Hello, Anjan. Yep.
The way you were saying that the senses, they recede into prajna, and that is a baffling for the mind. There's no experience but pure knowing. The other way turning around is that when consciousness moves further outward, we actually lose something by employing the senses. So we totally experience the other way around, that we lose something when we fall asleep.
Expand away. All right, here we go. Anjan says, hi, all. Hi, or as we say in the South, all y'all. Hi, all y'all. Y'all. That's what they say in this part of the U.S. Hi, y'all. All y'all. Maitreyi's learning how to talk that Southern. Well, when she first came here, I bought her a book called How to Speak Southern. Uh-oh, we're in trouble now. Joe is here. And when Joe is here, we're in trouble. Here's what Swami Rama has to say. It's exciting.
Drum roll.
Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll, drum roll. In the dreaming state, tejasa. Remember, the word tejasa refers to a level. It's a plane of reality. The actual word for dreaming is swapnu. Swapnu means dreaming. Swapnu, or dreaming, is what you and I typically do in the plane of reality called tejasa. There's a subtle point here that I'm pausing to make there, but it's very useful and very important. Otherwise, we misunderstand that Tejasa is operating right now for me to talk to you, and Tejasa is operating for you right now as you are listening to me talk to you. It does not just mean laying down in bed dreaming, and that's called Tejasa. That's called Swapnu. When you and I lay down and we fall asleep and we're having a dream, that process is named Swapnu. But it occurs in a plane of reality called Tejasa. Why is that important? Why am I pausing here? I'm not challenging what Swami Rama is saying. He's telling this to an audience that is pretty slow and frankly not very bright. And I include myself in that. When I was first trying to understand this thing, some of you have heard me say it before, I finally had to put the book down and realize I don't have any idea what this book says. I knew every word in the book. I looked at it. I'd look. I couldn't. There was no words I didn't really get, but I couldn't understand anything about it. And I had to put the book down. And a few years later, after listening to the instructions and following the instructions of what the boss told me to do, one day I picked this thing up again after a couple years, and I read it, and everything in it made sense. And so it comes from doing the practices and contemplating over and over. Again, I'm pausing here because right now, as you are listening to my voice talk to you, you have some aspect of your mental process that is a little bit like the microprocessor in your computer or your cell phone. Think of the magic of your cell phone. I know it's not magic, it's technology. But think of the magic of your cell phone. I'm sitting here talking on my phone to Matri, and she's across town on her phone. And so the telephone is taking my voice and doing a whole bunch of stuff to it, transmitting out there through a cell phone tower, goes to another tower, comes down to her phone, and the inside of her phone does some sort of processing, and she hears my voice in her ear. Think of the amazement of this technology that can do that. There is a part of this process that's called the microchip and the program and all of that stuff that's inside of my phone and inside of her phone that's doing the processing right now. That's the plane as a metaphor. It's just a metaphor. That's the metaphor of the plane of reality called Tejasa. So right now, your level of Tejasa is doing the mental processing to be able to listen to me talk to you. My level of Tejasa is doing the inner mental processing like it's a little microchip in there, which of course there is not, but it's a metaphor. Mine is doing that right now so that I can form the words and move my tongue and my lips here like this, and my vocal cords down here so I can make a voice to speak to the computer so that it can do its processing. So Vaishvanara is the plane of reality that you and I are in out here, where you think Nilesh is sitting over thinking he's sitting there on the couch listening to me. And if I'm deluded also, I think I'm sitting over here talking to Nilesh and he is over there. And there's Joe, and there's Pooja, and there's Matri. And so there's me, and there's them, and there's all of you. But each one of us, the surface level stuff, my voice and your ears are operating at the plane of reality called Vaishvanara. That's the verse we looked at last week. This week, this verse is saying, in the dreaming state, Tejas of the mind is inwardly aware and recalls the subtle impressions from previous experiences. And I'm trying to point out to you that the word Tejasa really is referring to that plane of reality. So that plane of reality in me and in you that right now is doing the unconscious active processing right now so we can have a conversation, that's the same plane of reality that's going on when you stop using your eyeballs and you stop using your ears and I stop using my vocal parts and everything. And that's when you and I put our head on the pillow and we start having a dream. You see, we're using the same level of mental processing. I hope that's making sense. That level of reality is the meaning behind Tejasa. It's just that when he's talking to idiots, which is what he's talking to here, we don't know what he's talking about. So he says, he refers it as if the word Tejasa refers to the literal act of dreaming. I'm sorry, that's not what it means. That's called swapnu. Jagrat swapnu sushupti is waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. We do jagrat in the plane of reality called Vaishnavar. That's what we're doing out here with voice. We do swapnu, dreaming, in the plane of reality called Tejasa. But the other thing that Tejasa does that is even more important than dreaming is it's the unconscious microprocessor metaphor that you and I are using right now. And most of the time, we give it no credit whatsoever. Why? Because we have fallen to sleep into this world out here. So I think I'm a Swami J, and Joe's sitting over there thinking he's a Joe, and Joe and Swami J are having a conversation. I hope this is making sense. But we're both deluded. We have fallen to sleep into this reality, and we're giving no credit whatsoever to the incredible microprocessor, active unconscious level of our being that is at the plane of reality called Tejasa. And if it wasn't there, there would be no conversation out here. So you and I want to gradually learn how to be aware of Tejasa, of that otherwise unconscious. Ordinary people have no awareness of that level of processing. We don't want to be ordinary people. We want to be extraordinary people. We want to wake up to the center of consciousness. That's why we keep doing all this stuff. Otherwise, all of this is just a waste of time. Or maybe you could call it a hobby or something like that. Anyway, silly hobby. It's a hard hobby, isn't it? In the dreaming state, Tejasa, the mind is inwardly aware and recalls the subtle impressions of previous experiences stored in the unconscious mind. When you turn your instruments off and you stop listening to me and you turn your indriyas, your cognitive senses inward, what are they going to be aware of? They're not being aware of me or anything else out here. It's sort of self-evident, isn't it? They are going to be aware of the previous experiences stored in the unconscious mind. And this is why we think of it as dreaming, because when that happens, then you and I start dreaming. I start dreaming about chapatis. We had some really yummy, fresh, you missed them, Joe. We had some nice chapatis. They were out here in the plane of reality called Vaishnavar, also in the dining room. And all we had to do was sit down, and they magically showed up on the plate. I'm telling you the truth, Joe. They just showed up, and all I had to do was eat them. It's a magical, magical universe we live in out here. And it's all thanks to Tejasa.
So what you're saying, Tejasa operates all the time.
It's operating constantly.
For me to process what you're saying, I had to come to this level of reality for me to process it and then actually create a meaning that comes to my conscious mind.
To have the understanding of the meaning, and then
something happens beneath that.
Beneath that, yes. It is going on, yes, exactly right. It's going on all the time.
So if I want to say something back to you, I bring something without being aware of it, something from that level of reality.
Yes.
When it comes to this level of reality, then I think...
And then it comes out of your mouth.
Right.
And I sit over here and I say, yes, Joe, that's it. Nail on the head. That's right. And now we're having a conversation. And in our avidya, in our illusion, in our ignorance, you think you're a Joe and I think I'm a Swami J, and we're just two people sitting here having a conversation, and we have no awareness at all of that unconscious processing.
So this unconscious process also have avidya, also have identity.
Of course. Yes. That's why we want to keep exploring, to see the way this whole game, this whole drama is playing out. And so then if we can do that, or the more we can do that, the more we see, wow, we're all caught up in this silly game of this world out here, and we think it's so damn important.
So when you say the reality of waking reality, it's relative reality.
It's relative reality, yes. I think I'm talking to a Joe, but I'm talking to Atman. I'm talking to pure consciousness. Now, we can have debates over this and fight, or we can have literal wars over it. We can have difference of opinions of how it happened that there's a Joe sitting there, but we don't have to fight about that. But the Atman, the pure consciousness, has manifested as a Joe, and it, the same one, has manifested as a Swami J. And so now all of this game can go on, and you can pretend you're an individual. I can pretend that I'm an individual. Nilesh can pretend he's an individual. Pooja can pretend that she's a Pooja. And Matri, we don't know what she's doing, but she can pretend, I guess, that she's a Matri. The gunas are playing with the gunas. It's just this game going on. It's the game of Leela. It's the play of the game. Anyway, there was what Swami Rama said. The dreaming state of consciousness, listen to this, is also said to have 7 instruments and 19 channels, because in dreaming the mind creates objects of enjoyment as they are found in the external world. My mind can create an internal Joe, and we could call it a nightmare, is probably an accurate statement. So there's a Joe out here. He's enough of a pain in the ass, the one out here. But on top of that, I can be asleep having a dream of Joe.
Bigger, meaner.
Yeah, you ought to see him stretching his hands over. He's getting bigger right now. He's filling the room right now out here, and this is only Vaishnava. Just think how big he can get in Tejasa. Big trouble. I'm playing with that because he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind me playing with it like that. But that's the principle. Those same instruments that you and I use out here in Vaishnava, in this world out here I use an eyeball. I use these flappy ear things. I use my tongue. I use my lips. I use my vocal cords. I use my lungs to create the air, to pressure out, to move the vocal cords, to make the sound. All of those instruments are there. But the basic instrumentation itself that is behind the eyeballs and the lips and the tongue and the vocal cords, that mental instrumentation is also operating in the dream.
So these are all subtle instruments.
They're all subtle instruments. Now, you and I actually already know this, but nobody ever pointed it out to us. In our childhood, in our schools, not the priests, not the pundits, not the lamas, not the whoever, not the psychologists. Nobody ever points this out to it, because even in psychology, we think, this is me. And what do those dreams have any meaning to me? Excuse me. That's all we know. But it's actually the same process. The instrumentation that you and I use out here through physical organs, we do the same thing inside. It's just that we're not using a physical organ. Inside, I don't have physical ears. I don't have physical eyes to see the internal Joe. But I have mental eye. I have the instrumentation of seeing. So I'm sitting there thinking I'm just going to have a nice sleep. I'm going to have a dream about God or Shiva or Krishna or Christ or Buddha or somebody. And what do I get? Joe. Damn, Joe again. This is a nightmare. But in my dream, I can see a Joe, and he's getting very, very big. And all that. Same instrumentations are operating there.
So I have a question. The spiritual practice is to discernment, viveka, in whatever that level of reality.
Discernment, viveka.
So that I can see that I'm not the dreaming reality.
I'm not the dreaming reality. Yes, that's part of it.
Myself as being different from it.
Yes. And so you take what I just said and you play with it. We look at ourselves. You don't take my word for it. You don't take Swami Rama's word for it. You don't take the Rishi's word for it, who wrote these 12 verses. It's only 12 verses. But you have to do it internally. And he's exactly right. You use your own discernment, your own viveka to play with this and say, damn, this makes sense. The same sensory experiences I'm having out here are exactly the same sensory experiences I'm having internally. when I close my eyes and put my head on the pillow and like that. And if I'm a good yogi and I'm sitting for my meditation and I have not fallen for the biggest trap of all of beginning meditators, which says, teacher, teacher, how do I get rid of these thoughts? That's the big trap. If we have not fallen for that trap, then we say, okay, I'm going to sit for meditation. I want to see what's going on in this Tejasa. I want to find out for myself, is this stupid Upanishad telling the truth? Is this Swami J telling the truth? Is this Swami Rama who's trying to explain this for us? Is he telling us the truth? That the same channels that are going on out here are going on internally? We want to discover that for ourselves. All of the books and all of the opinions out here are absolutely worthless if we don't do that ourselves. That's what we want to know.
So a yogi of certain development is witnessing all of this in the waking state.
Yes.
You can feel, you can actually be aware how that level of reality actually becomes part of this.
You can see it happening right now. And then that's a matter of degree to which one's an adept. You just had some words come out of your mouth. Okay, so maybe you're not Krishna yet. And so maybe you don't have quite the 100% clarity in there to see it. But you have enough clarity that you can use your inference. You can infer with your buddhi that operates out here that these words that are coming out of my mouth to the Swami J over there are coming from that inner part. They're coming through Tejasa, coming out into Vaishnavar. You can do that. And that's the way we do the contemplation. Elsewhere we talk about the contemplation happens in stages. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, Sakshatkara. I'm not going to try to talk about them right now, but there's a sequence of processes that happens to the contemplation. And it starts by just pondering over it. And at that level of pondering, your own intelligence out here says, wow, this stuff is making sense. This is making sense. I've been reading through this crap for years. And somehow, sitting here on this chair today, this is making sense. And this just came out of me, Joe. These words came out of me, Joe, and said, you mean to say that, blah, 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 everything you just said. And I'm saying back to you, yes.
Eventually, when one is in Turiya, then all of these are just part of one's own. In
Turiya, these are gone.
7:30.
Because these only operate in Vaishvanara and Tejasa. And we're only tonight in the plane of reality called Tejasa. Last time we were together and did this, we talked about Vaishvanara. Tonight we're talking about Tejasa. This is only verse 4 of the 12.
So if I'm in the plane of reality of Turiya and I'm awake in the world,
there's no cognitive senses operating in Turiya. They don't exist. It's just pure consciousness. Now, I know that's hard to swallow because out here right now, we are using our instrumentation in mind to have the conversation in Vaishvanara.
So in Turiya, I cannot drive my car.
In Turiya, you can't drive your car.
You can live.
You know, what car? What car? There is no car.
Okay.
All there is Brahman. There is no car.
Okay.
Oh, my.
All right.
My.
I'll take
all there, to put it another way, that's the idea. To say it in another term that's we're all kind of familiar with, all there is God.
Yeah, I can trade my car for God anytime.
Hey, you need to give it to someone.
Huh?
He needs to give it to someone.
There's no someone.
There is no someone, and you know that. But this is why we play with this stuff. You and I live most of our lives out here in the plane of reality called Vaishvanara. Right now, we're talking about the next subtler plane called Tejasa, and what we're coming to see is the two of them are really not so terribly different. This is why the sages for a very long time have been telling us all, look, you idiots, you have fallen asleep. You think this is the waking state. You have fallen asleep into this delusion. And so they say in one voice, wake up, wake up. I have a wake up sign on the wall over there. says, wake up, you idiots. You're asleep right now.
So this ashram is a
But-
big alarm clock.
And no but I don't know how to
Yes,
say
the
it.
ashram is an alarm clock, Joe said. Yes, I like that.
I have to say but I don't mean but what he was saying is that once that experience has been experienced, or
The Turiya.
the Turiya, then a sage on the outside here who lives from there can
Yes.
still function and play with all these instruments.
Plays
Never
out here.
leave-
Absolutely
never-
plays out here. And all of the play out here, then there's nothing left to do.
For us, it will be already.
There's nothing left to do. So what is the game that then gets played by the sage? Service.
Because for
Only
us,
spontaneous service of other people, because there's nothing left to do.
and for us, it is already impossible to think that we would actually operate from the level of deep sleep while being in the world.
Yeah, we have trouble even thinking that you can operate consciously from deep sleep, let alone that there's such a thing as Turiya.
Yeah.
But we have to use language to talk about it. So if we're in the plane of Vaishnava out here in the waking state, what do? Stay asleep and stay ignorant and say, well, it's hopeless. It's a hopeless journey.
We're screwed.
We're screwed. I'm screwed. I'll tell you when it came to me that I'm absolutely screwed was when I started to have some degree of understanding of what this was about, and the hunger for it got greater and greater and greater. And I realized, there's a phrase in boats that are out over the ocean. If there's a ship coming from Europe, crossing the Atlantic, coming to the United States, or vice versa, or with airplanes, there's a point in there where there's a point of no return.
Don't have enough fuel.
You don't have enough fuel to go back. There's a certain distance you go out. If you have to travel 3,000 miles and and you don't have enough fuel to get halfway and turn back, you are at the point of no return. There's no way back. You have to keep going. And I had this experience in my life where I realized in the language that came to me internally as me as a culture, as an enculturated, conditioned person was, I'm screwed. I actually use the F word internally. I'm really screwed now. I've gone too far. I literally went through a point. I said, I have gone too far now. I cannot turn back. It's simply not possible. I can't do it. And it wasn't a statement of conviction. I'm being honest. It was not a statement of, wow, now finally I have some conviction to find spiritual truth. It wasn't that at all. It was shocking. It was terrifying. It was depressing. It was confusing. But I knew it was the truth. I've gone too far. Now I've gone too far. There's no turning back. It's a very, very good thing. It's an extremely good thing.
It's like,
And I know some of you who are of us who hang out together, you're either very close to that point or you've already passed it. And then is when you really say, I really do. I need to know more about this Tejasa. Some part of me doesn't want to know. I do not want to explore my unconscious. I do not want to know anything about my attractions, my aversions, my fears, my false identities. But damn, I've gone too far. Now I don't have any choice. So in that spirit, I want to know about my unconscious mind. And none of us wants to know about our unconscious mind. I hope that makes sense. It's okay, Mom?
you want to get to the other end.
If you want, yeah, maybe you've passed the point of no return or something like that. So let me get back to what the smart guy knows here.
I should have given one of you one of those fake smiles. Yeah.
Yeah, she's giving me that fake smile. Like, yes, okay, uh-huh.
Keep going.
Keep going now. It's Saturday night. I'm being a troublemaker. It's Saturday night. Do you ever notice this happens? We come to Saturday Night Live and I go a little bit crazy with this stuff. But it's
You're not
really,
yelling at anyone yet. So
but it's really, really, maybe I'll start yelling at Joe. I'm getting pretty loud though.
that's all right.
Getting kind of outspoken. The dreaming state of consciousness is also said to have 7 instruments and 19 channels, because in dreaming, the mind creates the objects of enjoyment as they are found in the external world. and it enjoys them as if it were in the waking state. Take that in. We already know this. Every one of us already knows this. In dreams, the mind tries to create all the objects that it could not enjoy during wakefulness, and thus it tries to satisfy suppressed and unfulfilled desires. Under the influence of ignorance and desire, this state is experienced as if it were real. And you and I, our habit is to try to block that. We don't really want to know that. We want it to go away. This is why in the mental health field, psychiatry and psychology say that dreaming is beneficial. It's healthy for me, this external waking consciousness person out here, me. Why do they say it's healthy for me? Because those dreams get to play themselves out in the dream state where you don't see them. What if you have a fantasy, an unconscious longing? Get ready for this comment. What if you have an unconscious longing to have sex with your best friend's spouse? Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. What if you have that desire and you don't know it? Mental health people, the psychoanalysts and psychologists will say that the healthy thing to do is that remains in your unconscious mind and you don't know about it. And if you happen to have an unconscious dream about it in the middle of the night, it doesn't matter. You can reach over to your spouse and have sex with your spouse, and your spouse never knows, and you never consciously know that you just had sex with your best friend's spouse. You just never knew it. This is a sign of mental health. The yogi says, no, no, no. I want to see my own unconscious, and I absolutely must listen to what the sages say. I must learn to cultivate non-attachment. I must learn how to not respond to what's going on in my unconscious mind. And if I can do that, then it's no big deal. I'm not going to go have sex with my best friend's spouse, and I'm not going to feed into it either. What, Mom?
And in the first few years of knowing you, every few months I would have a dream of doing something with a male.
She had dreams of men. Oh my.
But eventually, after a while, in the dream, I start to realize I don't do this anymore. I have taken sannyas. And then gradually, the dreams faded away.
Gradually, the dreams faded away. And it happened by being aware, by being constantly around me. Every time we take a walk, we're talking about Vaishvanara and Tejasa and Prajna and Turiya. It's just this ongoing contemplation.
And not beat up on yourself.
And it's not beating up on yourself. But there must be this curiosity that says, I want to know about this stuff. And this is the way minds work, all of them. This is an incredible summary of how minds operate, what this is that we're looking at here. The yogis really figured it out.
I think now I understand. From time to time, I get like a very small desire, which I tend to fulfill, and difficult for me to resist it.
Externally fulfilled.
Externally,
yeah.
And I would always say, gee, this is such a small desire. Why am I indulging it? And now that we're talking about it, I realize there's probably a whole bunch of it in subconscious mind.
Yes.
I'm just not aware of it.
Yes.
But I will always wonder, this is like no big deal. Why am I, indulging it? And I could not understand. Now I think I understand that.
Because we are loaded with many, 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 many desires. Many. If I may playfully say this, guess what? It's not just for your best friend's spouse. I say that playfully.
They have a dog too.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I have a dog too. And there's all those other people on the street. And then we gradually come to understand increasingly the nature of primitive urges. The primitive urge of sex is not merely the desire to have fornication as human beings have sex together. That's not it. As soon as there is an individuated being, there is the built-in impetus to preserve itself. If it knows that it's going to die, then it wants to preserve itself by replicating itself. There's nothing in nature that is exempt from that. The moment where I most clearly understood that was when I was visiting many years ago, 30 years ago, visiting in somebody's home, and they had a television show on something like the Discovery Channel. And I don't know what the show was about, but there was a camera hooked up to a microscope, and it was looking through a microscope down into a petri dish, which had some little single-cell parameciums or amoebas or something swimming around in this water on a petri dish. And suddenly, out of nowhere, this insight struck me. I think it was the guidance of Guru that said, look at that single cell. That single cell has the same impetus for food, sleep, sex, and self-preservation that we keep talking about. It's the same as me. It just has instrumentation, so it does it differently. It doesn't have a whole body with what do you call? I was going to say genetic organs, genital organs. It doesn't have genitalia, which is complex cells, but it has the desire to repeat itself. Even if it's a single cell that replicates itself by cell division. The one cell divides into two cells, and the two cells go swimming off. There is the impetus to preserve and replicate itself because it wants continuous. It wants continuation. It's the fifth klesha that we talk about, abhinivesha, in the Yoga Sutras.
When in the Art of Joyful Living it is said that the truth is the hardest thing to bury, and that the students are actually hard to find to really pass it on.
Students are hard to find, yes.
Is that impetus to preserve the teachings, to pass on the teachings, is that in this category as well?
In some sense, yes, ultimately it is. One of the final desires that has to let go is the desire to help somebody else. And this is why the comment is that there comes a point when it's all about Turiya, that it's not done out of desire to serve people. It's that there's nothing left to do. There's nothing else to do other than respond to the needs of the moment to those who are in the avidya. Make sense? But it's not a desire built on I'm going to save the world or something like that.
Or I am going to pass on the teaching.
I'm going to pass on the teaching. That's a trap. And gradually you come to see that, wait a minute, that's not it. But here I am. It's the dharma of the sun to put out sunlight. It's just what it does. So, okay, it's the dharma. There's nothing left to do. All I can do is put it out and like that. But there's a point where it's not ego-driven. It's not as a driven, replicating goal.
As we have a living example.
We don't know.
I do.
But, yeah. So anyway, all of this that we're talking about, we just keep doing it. And the big part here is don't be afraid of exploring Tejasa. It's not Atman, and there's no escaping it. The wish of all of us is, oh, teacher, great guru, I have a great guru. I don't have to look at my unconscious mind. My guru is going to lead me directly to God realization. No, it simply does not work that way, because the me who claims that I want self-realization has already fallen asleep into the nightmare of this me. So there's nowhere to go. There's no escaping. This is what Arjuna wanted to do in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1. 18 chapters, symbolic of 18 days of teaching of Krishna to Arjuna. Day 1, Arjuna says, I quit. I'm going to escape. I don't want to fight the battle of life. Remember, all the people on the other side of the battlefield there, those were symbolically his own unconscious. He said, I don't want to fight the battle with my own unconscious mind. I don't want to see Tejasa. That's the gist of what it was. I want to stay out here in Vaishnavar and go live happily ever after. And Krishna says, no, you idiot. You're trying to escape. And I'm sorry, Mr. Arjuna, it's simply not possible for you to escape. He wasn't giving him a rule that says, if you don't follow my rules, I won't help you. That wasn't it. He's telling me it's simply not possible, Mr. Arjuna, my friend. Of course, it says somewhere in the Bhagavad Gita that the only reason you and I can do this together is because we are friends. And it's in the spirit of friendship and love that Krishna is teaching Arjuna. And he's telling him, you idiot, you think you can escape. You cannot escape. None of us can escape the unconscious. That's not a depressing thought. It's not. It's just the reality of what's going on. That's the gist of this chapter, but let me read it on so we can,
For an idiot?
For an idiot, yeah. Can you get me some water, please?
Absolutely.
That would really be wonderful.
Yeah.
Whoever I am in this body has a throat that is a little.
Or just go beyond it. Come on.
I'll go beyond it, but then I can't talk. And if I can't talk, you won't hear me. And if you don't hear me, then this level of communication drops. And then we'll all sit here in silence. But
So what you said about Arjuna and Krishna.
I'm just talking.
So this friendship implies implicit trust between them.
Yes.
So it's somewhere
And that's the meaning of Shraddha. It's not blind faith, belief in a religion, figure and all that. It's this innate thing that says, damn, I'm screwed. I don't have any choice. Who do I have in my world, in my life, that I can even talk to about this stuff?
Yeah, I think it's Sargadana Maharaj said it's easy to find a real teacher, but most difficult to trust and to follow his guidance and advice.
Under the influence of ignorance and desire, the state is experienced as if it were real. Tejasa. During the waking state, the mind uses the senses for experiencing the objects of the world and employs them for interpreting different types of objects out here. But in the dreaming state, the mind has withdrawn itself from the senses. And so the flow of impressions stored in the unconscious mind during the waking state comes forward. Hear that carefully. The impressions stored in the unconscious mind during the waking state come forward. In other words, out here in Vaishnavar, stuff comes in my eyes and ears and taste and smell, and it gets stored in the unconscious. So when I'm not operating out here, what comes forward? Those very memory traces. The memory of your best friend's spouse, the memory of the chapatis we had for dinner, and on and on and on. That's what's going on in there. The dreamer dreams for a reason. There are still desires to be fulfilled. When the body and conscious mind take rest, suddenly impressions hidden in the unconscious come forward from the storehouse of merits, demerits, and memories in want of fulfilling these desires. So the mind creates an image of the object to fulfill that desire. This is the nature, the functioning, the beauty of how a human being is structured. This is Swami Rama speaking eloquently. If one cannot fulfill a desire in the waking reality, dreams fulfill it in the dreaming reality. In the waking state, listen to this, in the waking state, one pushes back all his unfulfilled desires and keeps them pending, pushes them back. I don't want to see them. Leave them in the unconscious, says Arjuna. Just as one piles papers on his desk, desires are piled up in one's unconscious, and so during dreaming, they all come forward. This is why we have trouble with meditation. In the early stages of meditation, wow, this meditation is great. I've never felt so relaxed in my life. After a few months or a year or two or something like that, say, why the hell did I start doing this meditation? This shit's driving me crazy. What's happened? You've gotten quiet enough to allow the unconscious to come forward. It's like, oh, damn, I thought I was avoiding that. It's a shock. Then, just as one's secretary brings all the piles of paper and one disposes of them. Likewise, any desire that is left behind unfulfilled is fulfilled during the dreaming state. Desires that are not fulfilled in the waking state are fulfilled in the dreaming state. But, here comes a but the dreamer is still not satisfied when he awakens, because when he comes back to the reality of the waking state, Vaishnavar out here, he forgets the reality of the dreaming state. He forgets that. If the dreamer remains in the dreaming state, he can fulfill all his desires by himself. So we would love to just stay in bed. Let's stay in bed all day with the blanket pulled up over me and a nice little squishy pillow and all this. I'll just stay in bed and daydream all day long. If the dreamer wants something, it is there with him. His desires can create all the things that he needs. Notice how quickly a new item comes into a dream. It's instant, is it not? If I say to you right now, if I say to every one of you right now, please remember your best friend in life. How long does it take to you remember that person? A fraction of a second. If I say, please remember a troublesome memory from childhood. That fellow, that boy, when I was a kid, punched me in the nose. Where did that come from? It can be an old memory you haven't thought about in years. It comes very quickly. His desire can create all the things that he needs. The difference is, listen to this, the difference is that in the waking state, one employs the senses to collect data from the external world. But in dreaming, one recalls the experiences from the past. Oops. Thought patterns, desires, and feelings that want to be satisfied in the external world but are not, are expressed in the dreaming state. This is considered to be therapeutic, and throughout history, the dreaming state has therefore been regarded as a useful mode of consciousness. Although dreams may not be important in themselves, they are useful as a means for providing information to waking consciousness. Since waking consciousness filters out a great deal of useful information that comes through the senses, memory, and extrasensory perception, dreams have been used by the waking consciousness to gain access to some of this information. But it gets better here. In the dreaming state, one processes experiences in a way that psychoanalysts have termed primary process functioning. Here, symbols are used to express multifaceted aspects of experience, and consciousness is not limited by time, space, and causation. You can move all over time in the dream, backwards, forward. You can move all over space. How long does it take to go from here, sitting in the living room of the ashram, to the high peaks of the Himalayas internally?
That's cool.
It's just very quick. In the dreaming state, causal and temporal logic is replaced by symbolic expression. Now, here's the deal. He mentioned here the primary process of psychoanalysts. Primary process is what's going on in that unconscious. That's where you had the dream of wanting to have sex with your best friend's spouse. If you start having primary process desires come forward to you in the waking state of consciousness, this is what psychoanalysis and psychology refers to as mental illness. You are psychotic. You have a problem. And so let's give you some drugs so that we can block those mental impressions. What you and I do out here in psychoanalysis is called secondary process. Secondary process is a sign of mental health. The experience, having too much experience of primary process, is considered by psychoanalysis as a psychopathology. It is mental illness. So what do you need? You need a nice, big, huge wall between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. If I can keep all of that shit back there on the other side of the wall, then I can be out here and be healthy. But if I'm out here in this world and I read a book about yoga or I hear somebody talk and I say, I think there may be such a thing as enlightenment. This is why Swami Rama titled this book Enlightenment Without God, because it's not about religion and belief in a deity. Nothing wrong with that. It's not about that, though. It is about exploring our own unconscious. So it's unavoidable. So what the yogi realizes is, I simply must learn how to follow the path of vairagya, non-attachment. It's one of the preliminary principles that Patanjali introduces in the Yoga Sutras. You simply must start to learn the principle of being undisturbed, unaffected, uninvolved by the primary process when it comes forward. If we can do that, then it doesn't matter that the old memory comes forward. I'm not going to get dragged around by it. I'm not going to get beat up by it. It's non-attachment. Very, very few people who are in the psychology field teach their clients, their patients, the principle of vairagya, of non-attachment. Instead, what we do is figure out how do we give a pill, a medication to block that, to put a nice big wall between primary process and secondary process so that we can live out here and think that everything is wonderful and ignore what's going on. Dreaming consciousness is complementary to waking consciousness, but generally many people have not established any link between the waking and dreaming states. And this is a very gratuitous comment on Swami Rama's part, but generally many people have not established a link. That's giving a lot to say many people.
None.
It's almost none. It's very rare. It's very, very rare to find a long-term. I have met people who are long-time students of this tradition and Swami Rama going back decades, who years later run into somebody say, I've discovered that I think I've missed something in what I was being taught about meditation. Who can I talk to? And my phone will ring. I've literally had it happen where somebody literally knocks on the door of the ashram. And I open the door and somebody says, hi, my name's so-and-so told me I should come and talk to you. I'm a student of Swami Rama from the 1970s. And can we have a conversation? And the classic thing that I find is this, that is a person who was trying to do something and remembering mantra and doing all this sort of stuff, and then years later realized I somehow overlooked what he was telling me years ago and want to know. And it is this problem of not establishing a link between waking and dreaming, because most of us, we just don't understand this principle that we're talking about, and we do like Arjuna did in chapter 1. We're saying, I want to escape this. I don't want to know the other people on the other side of the battlefield. Besides, they are my relatives. My unconscious samskaras are part of me. They are my family. They identify me. I cannot go into a war with them. I cannot look at them. I don't want to do that. That's what this is talking about. Dreaming consciousness is complementary to waking consciousness, but generally many people, most people, have not established any link between the waking and dreaming states. Though modern science has shown that almost everyone dreams several times each night, they do dream research, many people are not aware of having had any dreams when they awaken. They are like dual personality, living one existence during the day and another at night. This is the difference between primary and secondary process, with the two remaining largely unknown to each other. There are various ways to make connections between these two modes of consciousness. Some people have partially integrated the two states by remembering or analyzing aspects of their dreams while in the waking state. So we sit in the waking state, we sit there with a dream therapist and we talk about our dreams. But that's still done from in the waking state, just having a conversation about the fragments of dream that I'm able to bring forward. analyzing aspects of their dreams in the waking state, and by bringing their self-awareness and self-regulation into the dreaming state. That's the end of this chapter. This stuff is very, 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 very rich, which I think you know by hanging out. I don't think all medication blocks the unconscious mind. No, I agree with you absolutely, Rosalind. It doesn't all block the unconscious mind. And some of it doesn't work very well. So it blocks off some of it, and a person gets maxed out on that drug. And so what do the doctors do? They think, okay, let's try, and there's another new medication out. Maybe this will block it. And sometimes the samskaras, the deep impressions, are so strong that no amount of medication will block it. And so then it seems like a hopeless situation. If you want to see something, my friends, that captures this beautifully, watch the movie A Beautiful Mind. It's not intended to be a yoga book, but what this man, John Nash, the actors and the producers and the directors in this movie did a beautiful job of portraying this thing. We can watch it as yogi and get some idea of the journey of this man who said, I finally ended up saying, I am hallucinating, and finally said, I am crazy, and agreed, I am absolutely schizophrenic. But in the storyline, the medication that he was on meant that he could not have a romantic life with his wife. And it tore him up. And so what did he do? He didn't go do yoga. They didn't put yoga in the movie. But what the man did was trained himself in vairagya, non-attachment. And they portrayed it very, very well. The actors did a beautiful job of representing this in a way that you and I can watch the DVD, watch the movie, and get some sense of non-attachment. And he talked literally to each one of his hallucinated people. You've watched this movie? He talked to each one of them at a certain point and said, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. One was a little girl, and this little 7-year-old girl did a beautiful job of acting. She just looked totally heartbroken. As he says, baby doll, does like this to her on the cheek, baby doll, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anymore. And the man stayed schizophrenic his whole life. He died recently in the last, year or two. But he was schizophrenic his whole life. And he went off of medications, and he never took the medications again, supposedly. He trained himself in non-attachment. I'm not saying that you and I are schizophrenic. We're not. But the process is there. And it has to do with Vaishvanara and Tejasa, these two levels. And these are only two of the 4 levels that are talked about here. The next time we come together, the next version will be on prajna, the 3rd level in. And this whole thing is an absolutely exciting journey.
We'll bring our pillows with us?
Bring your pillow. Yeah, bring your pillow. Said playfully. And so remember, what we're talking about here is mapped out in Om Mantra. This is the meaning of Om Mantra. And yet some people think, oh, no, Om Mantra is just a symbol of a religion, with no awareness whatsoever of these levels of consciousness that it truly represents. And these levels of consciousness are universal. They apply to all people of all countries, of all cultures, of all religions, including the atheists and the anti-theists. It's incredible journey, isn't it? And if we have some sense, even the slightest sense about what we've been doing just in hanging out with this, and we've only talked about, what was that? We've only talked about 4 verses out of the 12. Is it any wonder that Om is at the heart of the Yoga Sutras, and that Om is at the heart of the Upanishads, and Om is the crescendo, is the highlight of the Bhagavad Gita? We keep going through all this stuff, and it's just over and over. There it is. There's the pinnacle of the sadhana is summarized in the Om. Notice in the Bhagavad Gita that chapter 18 is where it has all come together. But in chapter 17, the last principle that is introduced in the last couple of verses of chapter 17 of the Bhagavad Gita. Don't take my word for it if you don't know it. Go look. And it is Om Tat Sat. It's literally written in the book. Om Tat Sat. This that we're talking about tonight is the reason that it's so profound and that it's there. Remember, Arjuna started out by saying, I want to escape. I don't want to deal with this. I want to run away. I'm going to live happily ever after in the mountains as a monk. Krishna says, no, you idiot. You cannot do that. You cannot run away from your own unconscious mind. And finally, after he takes him through the whole journey, what's the final summary that Krishna gives Arjuna? Om. Om Tat Sat. Om. Om. That is the reality that you're looking for, Arjuna. That's what we're looking at here in this thing. It's quite a journey, isn't it? Prajna, yippee, says Roz. Yippee. Took me years. The pain that I was in was extraordinary. I know it was, Roz. I know it was. I saw you go through it, and I was on the receiving end of some of the aspects of that, as you know. And that's not easy either. It's hard to watch somebody you care for suffer and know that at this moment there's not a damn thing I can do about it. But yet, with time and perseverance, somebody gets up, falls down, and gets up again and again and again and again and again. And that's all of us. Each in our own way, that's all of us. So, anyway, thank you for visiting and playing. And my screen just went black, so I don't know what just happened. My screen went black. And so if you can hear me, Prajna, the screen literally just went black. So I don't know if you can still hear my voice or not, or if it ended. But anyway, so I'll just stop there and we will find out. What? No, the power didn't go out. The screen went black. So anyway, if you can still hear me, we will continue later. And thank you for playing. And yes, Hashim said yes. So it must mean yes, something's going on. So anyway, bye-bye. Remember, Om Tat Sat. There it is. It's all in the Om. Okay? Bye-bye.